He is unkempt and disheveled, yet his eyes burn with a fierce, piercing intensity. In the depths of a Russian prison, he performs the most degrading cleaning duties in the restrooms, but his mind never wanders far from the boxing ring, just a single wall above his head. He once stood gloriously in that very ring, basking in the deafening cheers of the crowd, until a crushing defeat at the hands of an American boxer left his right leg shattered and his career in ruins. Now, he has been reduced to a bottom-tier janitor, a man despised and discarded by everyone around him. Gaga, the mob boss pulling the strings behind the prison's fighting circuit, is riding high on the excitement of his new fighter's latest victory. As he passes by the man named Boyka, one of his henchmen accidentally drops a $1,000 bill on the floor. Boyka calls out to the group, alerting them to the fallen cash. It is only then that Gaga truly remembers the fighter who used to rake in massive fortunes for him. Boyka has been forgotten by the world for far too long, yet the fire within his soul has never once flickered or faded. In his moments of solitude, he utilizes filthy water buckets as makeshift weights, training relentlessly to rehabilitate his injured knee. He remains unshakable in his conviction that he is the most complete fighter in the world, a belief that stands as firm as a mountain. While Boyka is busy repairing a grimy mop, Gaga pays a visit to his cell. He offers to transfer the crippled Boyka to the prison library, claiming it as a gesture of pity for his shattered leg. To his surprise, Boyka rejects the offer without a moment's hesitation. He refuses to accept any form of pathetic charity or handouts. If Gaga truly wants to help him, he demands to be put back into the ring because he believes he was born for nothing but the fight. Gaga is convinced that sending a one-legged Boyka into the ring against his top-tier fighters would be nothing short of a suicide mission. However, once he looks into Boyka's steel-hard gaze, he realizes that this man would rather die on the canvas than live in the shadows. Still, Gaga refuses to grant the request, unwilling to authorize what he sees as an impossible and losing effort. Boyka does not let the rejection break him, continuing to drill his damaged leg day after day until he feels the time is right to reclaim his throne. He retrieves a hidden blade from beneath his bed, shaving off his long hair and beard to reveal the warrior beneath. At this time, the underground tournament in the Russian prison has reached its final championship bout. The champion who wins the tournament will be sent to participate in the World Prison Fighting Championship, where the winner will have a chance to earn their freedom. The man currently dominating the ring is Saikov, the strongest fighter in the Russian system, who easily floors his opponent before delivering a brutal stomp that knocks the man unconscious. As Saikov triumphantly raises his arms to soak in the adulation, a bucket of cold water is suddenly splashed over him. The man standing there is none other than Boyka, now completely transformed and sporting a fresh look, declaring his return to the ring. The guards immediately swarm Boyka, assuming he's there to cause a riot, and prepare to haul him away. Boyka shouts at the top of his lungs, demanding his right to fight. Gaga eventually has a change of heart, deciding that this man deserves one final chance to reclaim his dignity. Having secured his wish, Boyka finally steps back onto the canvas to engage in a showdown with Saikov. He meets the challenge with calm, calculated precision, landing a punch square on Saikov's face that nearly sends the powerhouse crashing down. It becomes instantly clear that Saikov, the so-called strongest, is absolutely nothing when standing across from a focused Boyka. With a single, effortless spinning kick, Boyka sends Saikov flying out of the ring. He wins the bout, successfully reclaiming both his honor and his standing as a champion. Yet, nobody has a clue that he is enduring the searing agony in his leg, forcing himself to maintain his composure just to finish the match. And this became his greatest weakness for the road ahead. Now crowned as the Russian prison champion, he is loaded onto a transport bus and sent to the neighboring country of Georgia. He arrives at the formidable Gorgon prison. There, he comes face to face with the most elite fighters, hand-picked from prisons across the globe. From this day forward, they will train and compete within the walls of Gorgon until a final victor is decided. During the initial assembly in the hall, two specific fighters leave a lasting impression on Boyka. One is the American fighter standing beside him, Turbo. He's got a volatile temper and openly defies Warden Koos, resulting in him being brutally disciplined by the guards on the spot. The other is the star of Gorgon Prison, a towering giant known by the nickname Dolor. As the local favorite, he carries himself like a big shot, arrogantly throwing his weight around and lecturing the fighters from every other nation. Boyka remains silent, merely watching the scene with a cold, detached gaze. He is here to fight, not to engage in useless trash talk. Arriving alongside the fighters are the mob bosses from their respective countries. The underworld leaders gather for a summit hosted by the Georgian kingpin, Rezo. The true purpose behind organizing this international tournament is to multiply their profits several times over. To these men, the fighters are nothing more than tools for generating wealth. When Boyka and the others are shown the arena they will be fighting in, they all feel a collective chill run down their spines. The arena is a brutal iron cage where the corners are reinforced with steel plates instead of padding, and even the rails are made of unforgiving iron bars. The cruelty of this international competition is clearly set to rise at an exponential rate. Boyka initially assumes they will be given ample time to train for the matches, but he quickly discovers how wrong he is. The warden has them shaken awake in the early hours of the morning, shackling them in heavy iron chains before they are trucked out to a mountain mining site to perform forced labor. Meanwhile, the local favorite, Dolor, spends his day in luxury, sitting atop the mountain, sipping tea and calmly reading a novel. Turbo is consumed with rage at the sight, questioning why they are being worked like mules while the giant gets to relax in comfort. Only after a grueling day of manual labor are they granted a single hour of training time. Most of the men are left utterly exhausted by the toil, leaving Boyka as the only one with the resolve to push through the fatigue in the training room. To his surprise, he soon notices that Turbo has also shown up to train, proving that there are others just as hungry for the win. While Dolor begins his own session, Warden Kus personally provides him with a group of human punching bags to hone his skills. The tournament officially commences as people from all over the world begin placing their bets on the broadcast. This is far more than a battle of blood and iron. It is a massive, high-stakes game of money. The first bout features a Brazilian fighter squaring off against a Greek opponent. After several intense rounds, the Brazilian fighter knocks his opponent unconscious, securing the first victory of the tournament. The second match pits the American Turbo against a fighter from Croatia. Initially, Turbo relies on traditional American boxing and combinations, which leaves him struggling under his opponent's pressure. However, he quickly pivots his strategy, blending in Jeet Kune Do techniques to shatter his opponent's defense with elbow strikes before finishing him with a devastating straight punch. Next up is Boyka, who is set to face off against a French fighter. Throughout this encounter, Boyka completely dominates the competition with a level of ferocity that makes it impossible to tell his leg was ever injured. Instead, he utilizes a relentless series of leg strikes to easily secure the win. The mob bosses from the other nations begin to sigh in frustration as they realize winning this tournament will be much harder than they anticipated. The final man to enter the ring is Dolor, whose appearance is met with a thunderous roar from the crowd, marking him as the clear favorite to take the title. He is matched against a martial artist from North Korea. During the fight, he treats his opponent with total disdain, casually toying with the man while playing to the crowd for more applause. Once he has had his fun, he moves in for the kill. With a spectacular 720-degree spinning sacrifice kick, he delivers a clean knockout to his opponent. Dolor's terrifying display of power even causes the veteran mob boss Gaga to frown and sigh with concern. The defeated fighters are left to wash their wounds in the restroom in a state of total disgrace. Suddenly, Kus appears before them. He informs the men that they are being deported back to their home countries. However, once the transport van reaches a desolate industrial zone, the guards simply dump the men and drive away. Instead of a vehicle waiting to take them home, the failed fighters are met with a hail of bullets. They are all discarded like useless pieces of trash. After their matches, Boyka and the others are sent back to the mines to continue their back-breaking labor. The motor-mouthed Turbo keeps prattling on in Boyka's ear without end, until Boyka finally hits his breaking point and unleashes a punch that splits Turbo's lip and sends blood flying. This sparks an immediate brawl between the two men right in the middle of the mining tunnels. Even with one foot shackled to a chain, they fight with such intensity that they become locked in a stalemate. Finally, the guards storm the scene and forcibly tear the two brawling men apart. As punishment for the fight, both Boyka and Turbo are thrown into solitary confinement. The solitary cells are filthy, damp, and suffocatingly small. The naturally chatty Turbo finds the claustrophobic environment terrifying, constantly trying to strike up a conversation with Boyka in the adjacent cell. This shared confinement, ironically, serves to bridge the gap between the two rivals, bringing their relationship a step closer. The once distant Boyka finally begins to open up and converse with the perpetually talkative Turbo. Boyka is kept in solitary confinement for a long stretch of time, only being released when Gaga demands to see his fighter. Gaga assumes his fighter has been treated well at Gorgon prison, given that he is a competitor in a major tournament. However, after listening to Boyka's blunt complaints, he realizes that they have all been played for fools. Furious that their fighters are being used as forced labor and only given an hour to train, Gaga and the American mob boss Farnati storm into Kus's office to demand answers. To their surprise, they find the Georgian boss Rezo already waiting for them. Rezo is unfazed by their aggression because the treacherous man has already formulated a plan. He advises them to abandon their own fighters and place all their bets on the powerhouse Dolor, ensuring that everyone walks away with a massive profit. To guarantee the win, Warden Kus will provide Dolor with full support while systematically breaking down and suppressing Boyka and the others. Over a single round of drinks, Boyka and Turbo are effortlessly sold out by their own bosses. Following their time in solitary, Boyka and Turbo have formed a partnership by the time they return to the mines. The two hot-tempered fighters have miraculously learned to work together, bickering while accommodating each other's pace. While they are working themselves to the bone, Dolor is hidden away in his room, injecting himself with an illicit performance-enhancing substance. This chemical is designed to rapidly boost muscle strength while masking fatigue and pain. It is clear that Kus was the one who provided this substance to Dolor. These men had abandoned all sense of fair play, stooping to blatant cheating just to secure a victory. The observant Turbo has already seen through the entire scheme, realizing that if they exhaust all their energy on the construction site, they won't have anything left for the ring. Yet, he is stunned to see that Boyka immediately heads to the training room the moment they return, leading Turbo to believe the man isn't even human. Inspired by Boyka's relentless drive, Turbo eventually joins him in the gym. Their unwavering persistence is noticed by Kus, who is infuriated and begins plotting new ways to torment them. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, Gaga and Farnati have been completely brainwashed by Rezo's scheme, frantically calling their associates to scrape together every cent they can find for the final bet. They have completely put their own fighters out of their minds. For Boyka and Turbo, the true nightmare is only just beginning. When the two men arrive at the mess hall and prepare to eat their breakfast, their shackles are slammed onto the table before they can take a single bite, and they are forcibly taken back to the quarry. Turbo grumbles and complains incessantly, but Boyka remains eerily calm while formulating a counter-strategy. Looking at the surrounding forest, it seems he has already found a solution. Since the warden is determined to rob them of their time and energy for training, they decide to turn the mining work itself into their training regimen. Massive boulders become their dumbbells, and dirt slopes become their heavy bags. No matter how hostile the environment, they successfully transform the gravel-strewn quarry into a world-class training facility. A powerful will is the ultimate card for rewriting one's destiny. Due to the sheer intensity of the training, Boyka's old leg injury begins to flare up with agonizing pain. Turbo notices his struggle and gathers a handful of small flowers from a crevice in the rocks, telling Boyka to crush them and apply the paste to his knee once they get back. Without even realizing it, the two men have transitioned from bitter rivals to comrades standing against oppression, becoming brothers who look out for one another. The new semifinals kick off, pitting Boyka against the Brazilian fighter Silva. Both men unleash everything they've learned in a high-stakes clash of styles. Silva's movement is incredibly fluid, allowing him to evade Boyka's signature mid-air double spin kicks. He even manages to land several strikes on Boyka's lingering leg injury. Despite being momentarily pinned down by Silva's agility, Boyka doesn't lose his nerve and keeps pressing forward. Finally, he spots his opening and lands a devastating kick to Silva's face. He follows up with a tight submission lock on Silva's head, forcing the man to tap out. Boyka immediately releases the hold and reaches out to help his fallen opponent up. This act of sportsmanship turns a corrupt game of shadows into a fair and honorable contest. Tragically, Silva cannot escape the grim fate of being secretly dealt with after his loss. Boyka's stunning performance starts to make Rezo uneasy. In his carefully planned grand layout, Boyka has already become the biggest variable. He orders Kus to increase the pressure, and their primary target is the seemingly more vulnerable Turbo. Turbo is hauled off to solitary confinement once again. The warden uses a made-up excuse to deliver a brutal beating to the American fighter. The next day, Boyka notices Turbo's seat at the table is empty. He heads to the cell only to find Turbo lying on his bunk, battered and barely able to move. Looking at Turbo's broken state, Boyka realizes the authorities have started playing for keeps. Even Dolor, who previously looked down on everyone, makes a direct move to provoke Boyka.
He lost to an American boxer. They say Boyka's a wounded horse now. He's a champion of the toilets.
Facing a threat as serious as Boyka, Dolor finally gets serious and ramps up his own training. Both elite fighters push themselves to the absolute brink in preparation for the final war. One day, Boyka is surprised to see a wounded Turbo dragging himself into the gym. Knowing Turbo has no chance of winning in his current condition, Boyka decides to help him escape this hellhole. However, Turbo's immense pride makes him refuse to play the coward. He believes that even if he loses, he'll just be sent back to a prison in his own country. However, the words of the old man delivering the water completely shattered Turbo's dream. He warns them that every fighter who loses mysteriously vanishes, and no one leaves this country alive. Reality finally sets in for Turbo, and he decides that staying alive is the only priority. Seizing a moment when the guards are distracted, Boyka uses a hammer to bash at Turbo's chains. Despite the hammer breaking, the iron links remain stubbornly intact. The noise alerts the guards, who come charging toward them like a pack of wolves. With no other choice, the two fighters have to take these bastards down first. The guards with their batons are no match for Boyka and Turbo, and are floored within seconds. Boyka manages to swipe a key from a downed guard and unlocks Turbo's shackles. He watches as Turbo scrambles up the hillside toward freedom. Just as a guard levels his rifle at the fleeing Turbo, Boyka hurls a rock with unerring precision, taking the guard out. And Turbo finally made his successful escape into the depths of the forest. Boyka is captured and hauled back to the depths of the prison. When the mastermind Rezo finally shows his face, Boyka demands to see Gaga. Instead, he is met with a heartbreaking sight. Gaga has completely turned his back on him, siding with Rezo and Kus in the belief that a cripple can't win. The day of the final championship bout finally arrives. It is the ultimate showdown for the title of the Prison King. Boyka versus Dolor. The two warriors trade blows, fighting on equal footing in the early stages. Neither man manages to gain a clear advantage, as they both land heavy strikes. The bosses in the stands start to sweat as they watch the stalemate. Dolor unleashes an even more savage assault. The brutal impact sends Boyka coughing up blood as he collapses against the railing, teetering on the edge of a total blackout. The sight of Gaga, the man who betrayed him, ignites a fresh wave of fury that drives Boyka back into the fray. In a shocking turn, Dolor seizes Boyka's crippled leg and ruthlessly snaps the knee that had never fully healed. This devastating blow leaves Boyka in unbearable agony. The Moguls are ecstatic, convinced the outcome is now a certainty. With his right leg failing him, Boyka is at the mercy of Dolor's brutal assault. He is pummeled repeatedly, his blood painting the canvas as he hits the floor over and over. Finally, a massive kick from Dolor sends a nearly unconscious Boyka flying out of the ring. At this point, everyone believes the fight is over. Dolor raises his arms once again, soaking in the cheers of the spectators. The referee looks down at the fallen Boyka and begins the count. As Boyka stares up from the floor, his eyes land on something familiar. It is the same filthy mop he used to clean the toilets. The sight of the mop triggers a flood of memories of his time as a lowly janitor. He remembers being treated like a beggar, scrubbing floors in the stench of the restrooms. He remembers the lack of respect and being treated like a maggot living in filth. He refuses to ever go back to that life. He is not trash. He is the king of the ring, a man who will never be humiliated or betrayed again. A scorching rage consumes Boyka's entire being. He crawls toward the grimy mop and tears off the wet, dirty rag. He binds the rag tightly around his shattered knee, determined to turn a symbol of humiliation into a badge of his ultimate glory. Boyka drags himself back into the ring and glares at Dolar with murder in his eyes. The final stage of the war is about to begin. Dolar is stunned to see Boyka standing again and even gives him a mocking round of applause. At that very moment, Boyka catches Dolar off guard with a sudden kick, sending him crashing to the floor. The silent inmates begin to chant Boyka's name.
Boyka! 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 Boyka!
Their voices growing into a roar. The entire arena becomes his home turf as the crowd is swept up by his unbreakable spirit. The smug looks on the faces of the mob bosses and the warden begin to fade into worry. Having transcended his physical limits, Boyka fights with a savage hunger for victory. He overwhelms Dolar with a barrage of punches, driving the giant back with every strike. He looks like an invincible god of war as his iron fists rain down on his enemy. Dolar lets out a final roar as both men commit to their strongest finishing moves. In a twist of fate, Boyka's injured leg becomes his most lethal weapon as he shatters Dolar's bone. Dolar screams in agony as he finally hits the canvas for the last time. Boyka is the victor. He points a defiant finger at Gaga, proving to everyone exactly what he is capable of. Rezo's grand plan falls apart completely as he realizes he has lost everything. Farnati, now bankrupt and desperate, storms into the warden's office with a gun to settle the score. Just as Rezo enters with his own men, Farnati opens fire and unalives the kingpin on the spot. Despite Boyka being the champion, Kusa's hatred for him has reached a breaking point. The warden hauls Boyka out to a desolate construction site to finish him off personally. Boyka closes his eyes, ready to accept his end. A shot rings out, but Boyka is the one left standing. Turbo has returned from the shadows to save his brother. To Boyka's absolute shock, Gaga is waiting for them on the main road. Gaga hands Boyka a suitcase overflowing with cash. It turns out he never bet on Dolar and had secretly stayed loyal to his old fighter. Having known Boyka for over a decade, he knew exactly what the man was made of. Sure enough, he won the gamble completely, and Gaga once again made a fortune. Turbo decides to stick with Gaga, finally finding a place where he belongs. As for Boyka, he chooses to step off the grid. He said his final farewell to his brother. Then, carrying his share of the prize money, he ran forward with a hearty laugh toward the freedom that belonged to him.